Residential real estate is about as screwed up as it can be. 33 years serving this market, and every day now is a surprise. Today, I'm sitting down with Jason Walter. He is a real estate agent and fellow YouTuber from Sacramento, California. I think you're going to really enjoy this show as we dive into what's happening in the market right now with buyers and sellers. I hope you like the show. Hey, Jason, so good to see you.
Good to see you too, Todd. Thanks so much for having me on.
Man, there is so much to unpack of what's going on in the real estate market. And, so being on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, I know you keep your thumb on the pulse. You've got a great channel. Certainly, everybody that's watching, if you're not already watching Jason, all of his links are in the show notes. Check him out. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. What I like best about you, Jason, and I podcast with a lot of people, and, bringing the market stats, bringing updates to people that want to know what is going on from real boots on the ground. So, what I love about you and respect about you so much is that you're a realtor, just like me. I mean, we're out there. This is what we do. I mean, it's our livelihood. So, thanks so much for taking time to be on our show.
I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. And I'm always open to talking about the housing market. My wife has heard enough.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll start off with the biggest question ever that we hear, you hear, I know, is now a good time to buy a house?
This is definitely the most common question that I get. And my response, I've been a real estate agent for 10 years as of a couple of months ago. And so my advice, the same advice I give people today as I did 10 years ago, is that don't buy a house unless you plan to own it for at least 7 to 10 plus years. So have long-term time horizons. People who reach out to me and say, "Hey, I found you on YouTube. I want to buy a house." And I say, "Okay, well, how long do you envision owning the house for?" And they say, "Oh, like a year or two." And I say, "Just rent, because it's anyone's guess what's going to happen in the short term." So I would say to be conservative, have long-term time horizons in which you're not going to sell a house for 7, 10 plus years. Have an emergency fund set up, like shocker. So 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses, ideally 6 months, saved up that you have in place even after you buy a house, all the closing costs associated with buying a home. Then also have a stable job as well. And so if those things are not in place, maybe buying a house is not for you. And so I never say, the common thing in real estate, right, is that you ask a real estate agent, when's a good time to buy a house? They say, "Oh, right now." Or when's the best time to sell a house? "Oh, right now." It's always now. So I'd say we should be more advisors rather than real estate pushers, and say, "Hey, okay, here's what I would recommend if you're going to be buying a home." And when people reach out, say, "Hey, I have short-term time horizons," then I always tell them to rent. I just give them my honest opinion. So I hope that answers your question in a roundabout way.
Jason, it does. I mean, I say the same exact thing. I mean, watching the last couple years unfold, and looking back and looking at all the remorse that we're seeing with buyers right now. I mean, it's real, right? I mean, these buyers have spent every last penny, talking to people that can't even afford to have carpet replaced in their house right now, because they don't have the money. They spent everything on their house they bought 6 months ago, and they can't believe what the prices are. And I think a lot of where we have failed in this industry, and I hate to say it, and and I may lose subscribers for saying it, other agents that are following along on my channel, but I mean, the amount of pressure that we put, especially on our young people, to jump in and buy a house and saying, you're going to miss the boat, right? I mean, if you don't buy now, and that's the fear of missing out that we've seen. And, and a lot of people right now, I mean, so we've all been kind of saying like, hey, we're at the top of the market. We've seen it before. I mean, Jason, I've been in it a little bit longer than you have. I mean, I've been in the housing industry for a very long time. But watching what happened unfold in 2006 with the peak, and seeing it today, there's so many similarities, even though people are like, it's not the same. But yeah, it's great to hear that you're telling people that. And, here's the other thing. When I was growing up, people didn't have starter homes. They bought a home to live in and raise their family, and they stayed there for 20, 30 years. where through the years we've come up with this idea that you have to own, right? You got to buy a house now. You can't waste money on rent. Where we came up with this, I think that we've failed miserably, with that. And, it's good to hear we're on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. I fear for the advice that maybe some people are given, like, yo, could just buy the house, you can date the rate, you can refinance down the road. That's just like horrible advice, in my opinion.
It is. So what do you think is the buyer sentiment right now? I mean, so we hit the peak. Interest rates were completely, unrealistically low. Pushed the prices of homes sky high. What are you seeing as the buyer sentiments in Sacramento, but not just there, but for what you're hearing, seeing on your show, talking to other people? What do you think the buyer sentiment is right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Thanks for that. I would say that on a national level, Fannie Mae just announced a housing market sentiment survey. They do that on a monthly basis. And the current levels right now are very, very close to all-time record lows. So housing sentiment, most people feel that now is a bad time to buy a home. And also there's some people who own houses as well who feel like maybe now is not a good time to sell. And so on a national level, I think people are really concerned about the rise in prices over the past several years, and also due to the fact that rates right now are around 6.5%-ish, whereas the average in 2021 was 3%, right? So due to the rise in prices and also due to the rise in rates, people are looking at their housing payment today versus just a few years ago and like, wow, this is like a giant increase. So I would say, and then also in Sacramento too, and buyers we work with, and also comments I get on my YouTube channel as well, is that a lot of people are more concerned about the rise in prices versus a rise in rates, because some people feel that like the prices have increased so much. We did have a downturn where prices decreased in the second half last year, but now they started to increase ever since February this year on a national level. Every market's different though, right? So I think that people are concerned about, I think, the lack of housing affordability due to the fact that prices have skyrocketed. And also you couple that with the rise in rates as well. And so we're seeing some people are like waiting on the sidelines, waiting for home prices to decrease 25, 40%. And they're looking at current trends we're seeing right now that I'm sharing on the channel, that prices have been increasing lately ever since February. So prices have been increasing for about 2 months, despite the fact that on a national level, prices are down on a year-over-year basis. So down compared to 1 year ago, but increasing, but not at the same rate last year. Anyways, yeah, what are you seeing in your marketplace? And
yeah, I think the same thing. Jason, people are, we're hearing a lot of people just saying they're sitting on the sidelines and, with hopes, right? And I say with hopes because there are a lot of people, Jason, I mean, they can't buy. When you take a look at the affordability, especially locally here in Maryland, being outside of DC where we are, and and north of Baltimore in our one location, what we're seeing is that what the median priced home that people can afford, they don't want to live in. So maybe they were qualified for $400,000, this time last year, or even 6-8 months ago. But now, because their debt to income ratio has changed so much, their credit card debt has gone up so much, their credit scores have dropped, their requirements and the points now to get down to 6.5%. Because and you bring up a good valid point. Yes, rates have come down, but the issue is that for people that don't have stellar credit, awesome credit scores, these are the people that are really getting clobbered, because now they have to buy points to even get down to a 6.5 or 7%. I mean, 7.64%. I just saw one recently, but I think a lot of people that they're on the sidelines. They are hoping that there's this big crash, right? That we've all been waiting for. I mean, I've said it. I mean, I said all along in the beginning, April of really 22, I said to expect, a 10% price crash, price adjustment, which I think we've seen in a lot of areas across the country, some more. But you're right. I mean, we've seen some that have gone up 15%. year over year in certain markets that are really strong with jobs, that are really, in where we're seeing a lot of domestic migration, certain states where people really want to go to, right? Get out of where they are, beat feet from New York City, a lot of what we see. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. How much are you seeing with people that don't care? They're the buyer that's like, I'm going to buy the mortgage payment, and I have the money to afford it, and I'm still going to compete, and I'm still going to go in. Are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, in my marketplace, which is Sacramento, California, our median still price here is around $500,000. Compare that to San Francisco, it's like 1.5, something like that. And so, and the Bay Area as a whole is like super expensive in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so, funny enough, a lot of people who find me through YouTube, those are the people who reach out who want to buy houses. And so what we're seeing, like we've been kind of like relocation specialists for the past several years because of that. People find me on YouTube and then they move here. And so we're seeing people move from more expensive areas to Sacramento, especially the Bay Area, because they may be living in San Francisco and living in a 1-bedroom studio, and they're millennials and they want to, raise a family, which may not be conducive if you're living in downtown San Francisco in a 1-bedroom apartment. And so the people I'm seeing who are interested in buying right now are people who have saved up, they have good jobs, work at home arrangements, and they want to start a family. They're engaged, they're married. And so we're seeing a lot of that in the Sacramento area where people are relocating here just because you can buy a nice house for the same payment you're paying for your 1-bedroom apartment or whatever in the Bay Area. So we're seeing a lot of that.
And is that pulling prices up rapidly? I mean, so, when you have an area, when I look at, the 500s, I think of that even where we are in Maryland. I mean, in certain counties in Maryland, I mean, 500,000, my gosh, we wish we had that inventory, right? Because some of the counties, I mean, you're going to be 900 to 1 million, and the houses need work. They're dated and things like that. Not everywhere, but where we're located in Howard County, Montgomery County, Frederick County. A lot of these areas, very expensive, high taxes. So when you look at somebody that's paying, I don't know, maybe they're paying what, $2,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bay Area, or are they paying more than that?
Oh no, more than that. I think it's like 3 or 4, depending on where they're located.
For just a small, probably 500 square foot apartment or something?
These are questions you usually don't ask, but I think that the rent there is, $2,000 would be really a steal in San Francisco, for example. So we've had clients who have moved from San Francisco or other parts of the Bay Area where they're looking at, okay, well, I can't even buy a starter home that's 1,200 square feet for $1 million, single family home. And they're looking at Sacramento at half that price, and they can work from home. So like, okay, well, gosh, let me look more into this area because I actually can afford like a nice house in Sacramento versus my 1-bedroom apartment, whatever. And looking at the current or the local market and thinking, well, I've been priced out. I don't know if I'll ever get there, which is just sad.
And inventory short, I would imagine, right? I mean, you're still in Sacramento, you're still short on inventory.
Well, historically speaking, yes. So we're up about 25% as of February compared to last February. But new listings are down by like 39% in the greater Sacramento area. So we're seeing this huge decrease of new listings, just like we're seeing in nationwide. I mean, Realtor.com posted a update. They post a weekly update, but they reported that on a year-over-year basis, new listings have decreased by double digits for like 34 or last 36 weeks, something like that. And so we're seeing this giant decrease of new listings because people have this lock-in effect where they don't want to give up their historically low rate of like 3%. And looking at current rates right now at 6.5, they don't have a lot of motivation to sell their houses, given the fact that rates have more than doubled. And also the market softened as well. And so we're seeing this kind of lack of new listings here in Sacramento, but nationwide really. And so when looking at inventory levels, like on a national level, depending on what source you look at, inventory is up by about 50 to 60% compared to the past couple of years. But when looking at pre-COVID levels back in 2019, we're still down by about 51%. And that wasn't really an issue when we had a downturn in our market last year, the second half last year, because we had low inventory levels, historically speaking, but prices are going down a lot. But now it's becoming more and more worse because we're not seeing this influx of new supply, which is really causing our inventory levels to be at very low levels, historically speaking, which is it's a big issue when people want to buy a house for a discount.
So that might be contributing to the people on the sidelines too. So if you're you're much more affordable and you're still having inventory issues, kind of give us an idea of what you're hearing with buyers. What are they looking for? I mean, like, what's most important to them? And just to kind of tee that up a little bit, I'm starting to see here where buyers are looking at properties that they wouldn't necessarily have picked, a year or so ago or 2 years ago if they were looking then. So what are you what are those things that are important that you're seeing that are important to the buyers? What kind of sacrifices are they making? And as you as an agent, what role are you playing in that to say that's a mistake or, no, that's good thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a real estate agents, we're definitely like part psychologists and counselors, advisors. We wear many hats. I think that because there's this low amount of supply, historically speaking, there's not a lot of options. And then also the houses that are priced right or even priced aggressively in Sacramento right now, home sellers are getting multiple offers, which is like people reach out thinking like, I imagine they probably reach out thinking, oh gosh, I can get a deal. I can write lowball offers. Now's my chance. But then they see a house that's listed right or priced aggressively, like below market value. We're seeing. I was actually just looking at the number of contracts being signed right now in Sacramento. So when looking at the total pool of pending home sales, our median price here is $500,000, but in the range of $300,000 to $500,000, in which the asking prices are in that range. Right now, the average number of offers received in Sacramento County is 5. So 5 offers, with some properties receiving over 15, 20, 25 offers on one single house. Right now. Yeah. Wow. And I just found this out last week because on our marketplace, it's really great because when a listing agent, when the seller accepts an offer and they mark the listing from active to pending, there's a field there saying were multiple offers received. This is a new field they just added maybe a few years ago. Time flies. It might have been 5 years ago. I don't know. But it says multiple, were multiple offers received, and yes or no. If it's yes, they actually can normally write in the number of offers that are actually received, which is great because I can see that on the MLS. And so when looking at the number of pending home sales, I can see the number of offers received, which is a great indication of the current market right now. I think the biggest mistake people make about trying to get an idea about what's happening right now in the market is they look at sold houses, especially ones that sold like 3-4 months ago. That was what our housing market was like more than 6 months ago, right? Because it's a lagging indicator. And so if someone's looking to kind of gauge what's happening with the market right now, my advice, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but to look at active listings, how fast are houses getting to escrow, or how fast are they accepting an offer? Are they staying in the market? And then in my marketplace, agents can see the number of offers received, which is a great tool to have. But on average for all price ranges in Sac County, when looking at the total number of pending home sales in Sac County, on average, home sellers receiving 3 offers, despite the fact that rates are at 6.5%, which is just kind of mind blowing.
That is amazing. With everything going on, and you're hearing about, like you said, interest rates going up, that you're still seeing. And based on the prices you're telling me, it's not a surprise, I guess, nationally. You guys seem to be pretty affordable. But, are people starting to give up? I know, Jason, when we're dealing with traditional real estate, right, before all of this madness, people care about commutes to work. And I know a lot of them are home now, but, they want specific neighborhoods or school zones, right? Or condition is a big thing where, they are looking at houses that they wouldn't have necessarily bought because it was dated we've heard stupid stuff, right? I can't buy the house. It's too much wallpaper. Like, hello, the rooms are
I don't
pink.
like the
I'm not
carpet.
interested. Yeah, I'm not interested in the house. It's got pink walls. Like, people don't realize, and guys, you might think we're exaggerating, but we're not. I mean, people do say these things. Yeah. But so kind of keying in on that, are you seeing where people are making sacrifices to get what they want? And do you think that that is smart, or which things do you think are smart and not really smart to sacrifice?
That's a really good question. So the only thing that you can't really change in a house is the location. And so if you have a location in mind, I would say that that's one thing you can't change. So that's the number one rule in real estate, right? Is location, location, location. So I wouldn't really stray too much far from like your ideal location. But for the as far as people who are kind of making I wouldn't, maybe it's a lack of a better word, concessions about their search, I would say that maybe to a certain degree. I mean, it would look a lot different if we had a ton of houses for sale in our area, right? They can really narrow in, like maybe on one particular neighborhood, like we saw 5-10 years ago. Whereas now you have to be more broad. And so when people reach out to us, we kind of have like a more narrow search, but that ends up kind of broadening, or, okay, maybe they want a 4-bedroom, but maybe now they're more open to a 3-bedroom now. In regards to your comment about, like, pre-COVID, people were looking for a place when they're, close driving distance to work. Whereas now in our marketplace, we're seeing a lot of people who are working from home. And so what I'm seeing personally is wanting a little bit bigger of a house because they're spending more time at home, and having like maybe that 4th bedroom that they can use as an office, whereas they didn't need that pre-COVID because they're going to the office every day. Another thing as well is like fast internet, because some houses don't have like as many options as others. And then number one for some people who are looking to start a family, which is the same case over the past 10 years, is looking for a good school system as well. So a little bit different regarding like that question. How much of a commute time are you looking for versus now? It's like there's different priorities given the fact that so many people work from home now.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in your marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're seeing people go back to work. We're seeing people getting called back into the office, and look, they're dragging. I mean, they're kicking and screaming, and we're seeing a lot of these, younger people. They're basically saying, if my job calls me back to work, I'm looking for a new job. I'm quitting, right? And I think what the employers are saying is that we're not getting the production that we need, or the functionality of a unit, the business. Yeah. Not every business. I mean, hey, look, if you're a computer programmer, I mean, that may be different for you. But if you're part of a team, an ad agency, or, anything that has a kind of a team environment where multiple people are working on things together, collaborating, it is kind of hard to get everybody to pitch in on a video conference, and it's so much easier to be able to walk down the hall, grab everybody and put them in a room. Right. Yeah. And as an employer, I mean, our agents, I mean, they've been working from home. It's not like 15, 20 years ago where you went to the office to get your leads, because there was a call desk. Now we do call duty remotely. We can, through the app, send it to somebody's home if they're on call, floor duty for leads. But that's not how we get our leads now anyway, right? I mean, you just said it. They're coming in through YouTube and social media and referrals and things like that. But I do think that people are starting to make certain concessions where, they're looking at the location. And Jason, I want to say two things that you said. One is location. That is it. And I get a lot of heat sometimes because people tell me, look, I've been in the business as an investor, a builder, sales broker. I've been serving this industry since 1989. Okay. A long time. I've seen a lot of ups, a lot of downs, different things, the .coms, whatever bust. And one thing I can tell you is houses fall apart. And, people will argue, they say houses appreciate. A well-maintained house will keep its value, but your land appreciates. It's location, location, location. I'll give you a perfect example. You put a nuclear waste plant across the street from your house ain't appreciating, right? Unless you can change the zoning and sell it for, a lot more than you could somebody living there. So location is the key. But what I'm starting to see is people looking at areas or looking at lots or looking and with neighbors with barking dogs that they wouldn't typically have done. And I'm saying, look, don't do that. Don't look at don't push yourself to the point where you've got to have it so much that you make such horrible decisions that you're going to live with for the entire time you're there at your owning that home. And, you can't change. The first thing I tell people, man, when we get there is look to the left, look to the right. That's what you're going to be dealing with, right? If there's a bark, if I'm showing the backyard and all of a sudden, 6 dogs come trying to jump over the 4-foot fence or the 6-foot fence and they're barking and carrying on, that's what you're buying. If you look to the right and they've got a junkyard in the backyard and cars are up on blocks and they're out there working on it and or partying, or you've got 6 trampolines in the back, that's what you're moving next to. Yeah. So I see people are like, well, maybe they'll move, maybe that they don't typically put the dogs outside. I'm like, go ask them. Go knock on the door and ask them, But I start seeing where people are like making these desperate, trying to justify making a purchase because they just want to own. And the other thing is, man, I don't know where we came up. I don't know. Have you ever rented before? Do you own a home?
Have I rented before? Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, I've rented. Right? People say, don't rent. It's making your landlord rich. Owning your home is making your bank rich. I mean, you're paying mostly interest payments on your loan, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you're going, I understand it is better. It's a lifestyle change buying a house. I get all that. Yeah, you hope for price appreciation through the years that your land and your house would be maintained. Historically, it's proven true. But what worries me right now, man, is that for the last 2 years, and it's going to kind of get us into, kind of wrapping up and some final thoughts here. But over the last 2 years, we've seen the home appreciation like we've never seen before. Yeah. Historically, Jason, home appreciation travels with wage growth or inflation. Inflation has outpaced wage growth. Now we're in a problem where we've got unaffordability all over the country, man. And that goes along with when you just said that people want to own because it's cheaper than renting. And then you can't actually find anything to buy. That's a crisis in itself, right? Yeah. So we have affordability across unaffordability, I think is maybe I said affordability, unaffordability across all spectrums here. I know you've touched on this in videos on your channel. I know you've talked about this more recently. What's your opinion on rates? Will the Fed pivot? I know we know that we're looking at least another increase in May, right? Maybe another increase, right? 2 more increases before they flatten it out, 1 more, whatever. Is the Fed going to pivot? Are we going to see mortgage rates like Black Knight claims back in the 4s in 25 or 24, 4s and 24, I think it was, or at least in the 5s? Are we going to see that again soon?
Yeah, I mean, that's like anyone's guess, really. I mean, I always tell people that I am not a real estate market fortune teller. And I would say when people ask me about predictions regarding the market and rates, I'd say that there's so many factors that impact rates that are completely beyond our control. You touched on the Fed. The Fed is likely going to increase rates in May by 25 basis points. But people also have to keep in mind is that the current mortgage rates we have today are already baked in the fact regarding the expectations of future rate hikes by the Fed. So it's not like the Fed increases rates by 25 basis points and then mortgage rates shoot up that same day. That doesn't happen. And so, in regards to like expectations or forecasts regarding rates, I think that you mentioned like the Fed pivot. Jerome Powell, when he had his press conference, was it a couple weeks ago? He clearly mentioned that they have no plans to do a pivot, but it appears that the investors in the bond market are thinking otherwise. And then it seems like that inflation is starting to wind down, although it's remaining very sticky. And the jobs market, it's slowing down as well, but still fairly strong. And so I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And then rates right now have been hovering around 6 to 7% for quite some time now. I mean, going back to really, October last year. So we're not seeing this giant surge in rates like we saw in the first half in the third quarter of 2022. So I don't think it's going to be, unless something like a black swan event occurs or something happens, I don't think we're going to see like a giant surge in rates. At some point, the Fed will have to pivot, but I would be really surprised they do that this year unless we start seeing inflation winding down big time. We get into a really bad recession and they have to kind of bail out the economy again. So yeah, hard to say what's going to happen. The Fed just released their minutes. Was it yesterday? And they actually mentioned the R word, saying we're going to see a recession in the second half this year.
Mild.
And so
mild
recession. Yeah.
Mild recession.
Yeah. That's what Fannie Mae's been saying as well, and other companies as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. In my opinion, how that impacts our housing market, in my opinion, it's going to be really the direction of rates, because it seems like our market right now is highly rate dependent. It's becoming very, very challenging to post videos about what's happening right now in the market, because we're talking about some lagging indicators such as home sold prices, and also some leading indicators, which tend to change, it seems like, every single week, because buyer demand has seemed to pivoted given the rises and increases in rates this year. And so in my opinion, the direction of our market this year is really going to be dependent on the direction of rates and also inventory. Are more people going to be listing their house for sale? We're not seeing that for 34 weeks or something like that. So we're seeing a decrease of new listings. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I think it's going to depend on rates and also how many people decide to list their houses for sale and inventory levels right now, because they're still at really low levels nationally speaking. What about you?
Well, with the sellers out there, it's no wonder they're not listing their homes, right? They're hearing where, they may sell their house, not what they could have sold it for, a year ago. But where do they go? That's the big question. It's like, and I think a lot of people, Jason, are saying, if I'm locked in at 2.75% or I refinanced at 3.25%, so when you're looking at that and what, who wants to go get something less than what they have and spend more money a month for it, right? But I think we are seeing that the people, at least locally here, that are selling, there's typically a domestic migration going on. Like they are relocating. They're going out of state. We have a lot of military here with everything going on in the news. It's no surprise. People are being shifted around. We have, NSA here. We have, a bunch of, military installations. We've got our federal government here locally. And so, we are seeing where people are like, I have to move. We have to put the house on the market. I got to go. it is what it is. We're even seeing relocation companies now again stepping into play, going and, saying, we'll take care of your home. We'll buy your home. We'll sell your home. I'm in a deal right now where it's a relocation company is the seller. And so, we are seeing some crazy things. But here's what, I guess, in being in the housing industry for 33 years, serving the housing market in one way or another, started out as a contractor, through the years, built houses. I find it hard to believe. We know that wage growth, wage reports just came out. We know that the wage growth, it's softening, right? We are even seeing hourly wages decrease, right? For the first time in a while. So when we look at that and we look at unaffordability and, with the Fed crushing, raising interest rates crushes anybody with debt. Yeah. Anybody with credit card debt, anybody with HELOC. I was having lunch with a friend of mine the other day. They said they got $250,000 home equity line of credit to buy a rental property. It's now 8.5%, right?
But they actually took the money out?
They took the money out and bought a piece of property, right, that they overpaid for in another state. in another state, right? So they're getting whammied in all, they're like, yeah, well, and they bought another house for themselves all in the same time. And I'm like, wow, how's that working out? They're like, well, it only costs us a couple $100 a month in the one house. And I'm like, okay, so you're in negative cash flow right now, right? And, where's that going to go? But I think, when we look at this and we go, okay, though the Fed rate doesn't necessarily directly correlate with the, treasury bills, but treasury and mortgage-backed securities kind of compete with each other, right? And when we see credit tightening and we see, people concerned about the overall economy, I don't think we're going to see 4 or 5% again. If we do, man, I can't imagine. If we do, Jason, what's going to happen to home prices?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing, that anything that reduces rates is just going to increase demand, which is going to cause prices to go up. So in my opinion, we really have like a supply issue. We need supply to increase, not for rates to come down, for anything really to increase demand, because that's just going to increase prices and decrease inventory levels. So in my opinion, which may not be like the common one, is that you kind of need to incentivize sellers or homeowners to sell their houses, really, because that's really going to be helping buyers more than anything, really. But hard to know what that would look like.
I really appreciate your time, your honesty, your candor. I mean, you're in the market. I mean, obviously, we depend on real estate sales to make a living. So, guys, when you're hearing myself and Jason and others that are in the industry bringing the facts as we know it, bringing our honest opinions, caring about our client, putting our client before our own needs, and just trying to educate you guys on what to do. You guys have to make the decision. So, before we part here, Jason, what do you say to the real estate agent that recently got their license?
Start a YouTube channel. Really, it's the best thing. I mean, I'm an introverted person. So many videos get like, hundreds of thousands of views, right? But if I was going to sit in a room and talk to people, even if it's like 500 people, I would be like scared. So the best thing I ever did for my business, I started my channel back in October of 2019. My channel was all about what it's like to live in my area, the greater Sacramento area. And that transition, once we had stay-at-home orders, I'm like, I'm at home. What are we going to talk about? That I talked about like stimulus stuff, and then I eventually talked about trends in the market. And so, last year I think 100% of our business came from YouTube. In 2021, 76% of our buyers came from YouTube as well. And if you look at my profit and ledger, I haven't paid anything in advertising in years, and I don't pay any ads on YouTube or anything. So people search on YouTube. A lot of people think that it's not a search engine, but it is. And they want to learn about what's going on in the market. Maybe it's the nation as a whole, or the market they're interested in buying in. And they find me probably just like you. And so I'd say if you got your license, now is the time to start your YouTube channel right now. It's the best thing ever. People call me and say, I feel like I know you already. And in my personal opinion, unless you're like meeting tons of people in person, the best way to build trust and to learn more about your personality is through video. And YouTube is a great platform for that, where people reach out, they feel like they know, like, and trust me already. It's like a phone call, like, oh, Jason, I want to see if you're available to be my real estate agent, versus pre-YouTube was like, okay, you're one of the agents I'm interviewing. What can you do for me? What's your track history, blah, blah, blah. And so now it's a totally different conversation now. It's been absolutely wonderful. And it's actually really fun making videos too. So yeah, that's my number one advice.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And guys, and you may, no matter what business, I mean, that's some good advice from Jason right there. Dive in. Hey, look, now's the time. And guys, we appreciate you watching. And as always, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so now and hit that thumbs up to let Jason and I know that you got some good value out of this video. And cruise on over to Jason's channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe to him. He has an amazing channel. Guys, you can just look at the comments. They love him. Jason's a good guy. He is out there, bringing it to you straight. And Jason, we thank you so much for your time. Look forward to doing it again.
Would love to. Thank you so much for having me on the channel. I'm honored to be here. And I hope you guys got some value out of this. And of course, if you did, hit the like button, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
guys. Well, we'll see you next time.
Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.